is hot outside. That is for dang sure.
Oh, I didn't sign
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you all to the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting for July 20th, 2017. My name is Brendan Jensen. I'm the District 6 representative, and I also chair the committee this time around. We have a packed agenda for the day, so with that, I will call the roll. Ms. Ortiz?
Here.
And Ms. Clear?
Here.
Excellent. With that, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes from our July 12th, 2017 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Excellent. The next item on our agenda is to review and possibly approve the recommended changes to the Municipal Code Title VI for animals. As you know, we've been going through the past couple of months working on how to clarify and improve our animal control code with the goals of making it easier to understand and have it cover some of the areas where it was lacking, that sort of thing. So with that, we've all gotten these lovely books with details. So Miss Lisa, would you like to describe the changes we've got before us?
I would. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before we do that, can we introduce ourselves so we know who
Sure.
everyone is, please?
Absolutely. We'll start with you.
My name's Karan Thadani. I'm the Chief of Prosecution. Hi, Ms. Ortiz. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I'm Lisa Robertson, City Attorney.
Lisa Pinkley, Supervisor of the Animal Control Unit.
Who do we have in the audience?
I'm Tracy Page. I do the licensing for the city of Topeka.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'm Jamie Dennis. I'm the records custodian supervisor.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anytime. With that,
Okay, so I provided you with this little packet, and there's a cover memo that kind of explained where we were at since the last meeting, and where we are now, hopefully. And since the last kind of booklet I did, I thought it was probably better to actually put the proposed revisions or the comments actually next to where they would be incorporated into the document as a little comment bubble. So hopefully you like that a little bit better. It's a little bit easier to follow. I apologize, though, because the printer, again, I said it's in red font, all of the changes, and it's in blue font, because when it prints out to Lindy's computer, it's in blue, and she worked really hard to try to figure it out, but she couldn't get it to red font, so I apologize for that. So we can either just start and go page by page and hit each of the bubbles, and you guys can say, hey, that works, or we need further comment, or just hit particular ones that you have questions or comments or further suggestions on, whatever your preference is.
ladies.
Well, where are we at? We're
So in this booklet,
Comparison.
comparison document.
We might as well go one by one.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right, so you will find on page 2 of the comparison document, it's in the definition section 6.05.010, subsection C. We had added at the end, at the suggestion of animal control.
have a comparison chart.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
How about the wrong book?
Yep, that's fine.
Oh,
We have,
we brought an extra.
Oh, sweet.
How would you know? Thank you.
And I think it's the 3rd tab. So on page 2 of that document, subsection C, at the request of animal control, they wanted to delete references to wildlife, fowl, and livestock, as these types of animals are taken to the livestock vet.
Yep.
All right? Okey-doke.
As is true.
They wanted to delete it because we won't be doing that, or,
They don't go to the
They don't go to
animal
the shelter.
right? Okay,
They go to the livestock vet.
okay.
Top of page 3, definition of at-large. This was at the request of animal control. This might be one we want to talk a little bit about. Animal control had asked for in addition of a voice or remote control reference as being adequate control for a dog at large. But they had also asked for, or when an animal is on the property of its owner, but unrestrained, except with an invisible fence or buried cable, or if it's wearing a shock collar. There was a little bit of discussion between prosecution and animal control and myself about whether or not it's advisable to say that an animal is at large if it is on the private property of its owner, even if there's not an invisible fence and even if there's not a shock collar, because it might be well behaved and it's there and it won't leave its property. So I didn't know what you all thought of that suggested,
Yes, ma'am.
God bless it, suggested addition. Sorry.
What if it was at large and then ran back on the property?
Yes,
That's-
that's typically what happens. And then when we arrive, they're back on their property.
Right.
And if we can't pick them up because they're on their property, they're subject to get back off after we leave. And that's an issue because it could bite somebody or get hit by a car. And that's what we're concerned about.
That was her reasoning for adding that language, in fact.
Yes.
So, this says, which is not under the physical control of owner by leash or other, and then you're adding the blue, right?
Yes, after the, well, or remote is added before control, just so it's a little bit more clear. And then everything after the semicolon.
Yeah, but that's, so if my dog and I are just in the driveway and we're just standing there, he's at large?
If you don't have an invisible
Right.
fence or a shock collar.
According to this ordinance, proposed ordinance, it would be at large, yes.
I don't like that.
That's why we,
I would say so I would agree that as long as you're supervising on your private property, then that would be fine. But if, like, I wouldn't just let a dog sit out in the front yard, even though they're on their property, because there's nothing there controlling that. Now, if there's some sort of barrier, then that's another matter. But yeah, I'm inclined to agree that unless they're under direct supervision, either by electronic methods of some kind or the owner.
But then then how can you enforce they were off and ran back on?
That would be an issue in itself. We can enforce the city tag issue if it's on the property, but we couldn't charge dog at large because it's on the property.
But you can anyway.
Though
I
if there
mean-
was an incident
now
off
it's
the
not.
property, wouldn't you charge them where the incident occurred?
Right, if we have a private complainant, they can register a dog at large ticket, and we can do it that way and
Yeah.
serve it to the owner. Now, the problem is picking up the dog if it's still loose. If we go up to the door and knock, nobody comes to the door, and this dog's still loose,
Well,
Then
but
we
if it's
take
not
it.
under direct supervision, then it would still be at large.
right, we'd have to actually add that language about
Yeah.
supervision, though.
So I would propose then essentially that your dog must be contained by something, be it a leash, be it a fence, electronic controls, unless it's under direct supervision of the owner or a responsible party. So that way, if you want to sit out in your front yard and you have a well-behaved pet, they don't necessarily have to be on a leash, but you couldn't leave them out there. And then, that way, if there's no one there, then even if it's on its property, it's still at large unless there's a provable control mechanism.
Okay.
What do you
That would
all
be-
think of that?
I agree.
I don't even like that. I know people that let their dogs out to use the restroom while they're getting ready for work or showering, and they're responsible dogs. I mean, they're trained, they're well-responsible dogs. And
I was going to say to that point, I think that the prosecution staff has reviewed some of that language, and that's why we kind of inserted the, do you want to think about this or talk about it a little bit further? So maybe,
For us, it's just hard to get over the issue of telling a property owner how to
Yeah.
treat their own property
Yeah.
within the confines of their property. And so, for example, if, it's a hunting dog that they put 5,000 to 10,000, this is just an example,
Right.
into training that dog to stay within the confines.
Yeah,
Why should that person be restricted? And if their dog wants to hang out in their yard as trained, why would they be considered at large? And so that was sort of our basis for it. We hashed this out with Ms. Pinkley yesterday, and we went back and forth with several scenarios. And I think the way around it is if she were to knock on a door and the dog was out, if she could ascertain that that dog didn't have a tag, that would be direct violation of the statute, and they could take the dog that way.
Okay.
But to tell someone, hey, you know,
It's
your
not gonna
dog,
fly.
it's just, we probably would get a lot of feedback, would be my opinion, and it wouldn't be positive.
And one of the things that, you know, when we did the tethering, you know, like you can only tether a dog for 15 minutes. People tether the dogs longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Again, they put them out there, go do what they're doing and come back.
Well, and now they have big fancy, leashes on a suspended
Yeah.
cable that you can literally walk the entire yard, and they can't tangle themselves up because they hang from above on a spring.
But that's still tethering.
And that's true.
I mean,
But if you can walk your entire yard while still tethered, that's, because the point was not to have them tied to a 6-foot leash on a post all day.
right,
So,
right.
The only thing at large, I have a neighbor, their dog runs all around the neighborhood, never goes home every now and then. All around the neighborhood, goes home every now and then, and that dog's never gonna be caught if that's the way it reads. So we're just saying that's okay, as long as you, if your dog's in your yard, if we check.
Right. You can sign a complaint against those people, though, and then they can get a dog at large ticket.
Okay, so you,
They have to pay it or set a court date. So that's one remedy there.
okay.
But like you said, you know, we may get there when the dog's already back in its yard, and we know that it's been out because you said it's been out, but it's home
Then you
free
can't do
now. You
anything,
can't
right?
pick it up.
So do you see that a lot? Which ones do you, is this gonna be an issue
It would be an issue in the future, yes, because we do see a lot of it.
if we don't say what?
If we don't require the dog to be restrained while it's on its property. There's going to be an issue because once it goes back to its property, it could get back off of its property.
Yep.
It will
Yep.
bite somebody in the street,
Yeah.
God forbid, or get hit by a car.
so you don't think requiring supervision is a way around that?
I like your idea, though, requiring
I like that
supervision.
idea.
If, like you said, if you're outside with your dog,
I like that idea.
I
I'd
do
be
agree
okay
with
with that.
Ms. Ortiz's concern with that, though I'm wondering, is that, in an issue where it is a well-behaved animal, is that ever going to rise to the point where there's a problem with that? Because I'm the same way you are. I mean, I let my dog out to go to the bathroom in the morning all the time, and I walk back to get my cup of coffee that's nearly done, and walk back out, and there she sits,
But is-
excited to see me.
Do you have a fenced yard?
No, our front yard isn't fenced.
And neither, my neighbor has a husky, and
Yeah.
that dog is well-trained. The dog doesn't not go
Yeah.
out of their perimeter, and they don't have a fenced yard.
So,
Not to say that it couldn't ever,
Right.
but I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, now my dog, well, that's a different story, but,
Yeah.
you know.
well, if they see a squirrel or a rabbit and they chase after it, yeah, that could be a problem because they could get hit by a car. Even if they're well behaved, if they see something they want to go after instinctively, then they go after it. Problems could occur.
Well, I've seen some really good trained dogs by Mo that will not move, you know. So anyway, that's just my concern. A lot of people, when they get home, they put their dog out, you know.
and there's never an issue with it.
There's never an issue,
So-
you know. And there are, I've seen the flip side, that there
Right.
are an issue, you know,
Right.
but.
But that's not to say we're going to drive down the road and see somebody out with their
Yeah.
dog and stop and say, oh, you're in violation of the dog at large, here's your ticket.
Yeah.
See,
We're going to
I'm-
have to receive a complaint.
Is that something where we could use language to describe the dog doing something other than, I mean, I guess that the problem is now we're trying to invent a solution for everything.
I just think we need to do whatever, we need to look at the issue, and if this is an issue, then we need to do something to try and curtail the issue. If it's not an issue, then there's nothing to worry about. But if it is an issue, then I think we need to add something.
I think it's an issue that we should add something.
Okay. So,
So I like your idea.
I do too.
so if we start with that, then,
So after the semicolon, perhaps you could put, or when an animal is on the property of its owner, but unrestrained, except when under the direct supervision of the owner, on a leash, or when there's the invisible
Similar.
fence.
And
Device.
you
And the
don't
shock
want to really
collar.
say owner, because what if I'm dog sitting?
Yeah.
See, then,
That's true.
that's what I'm saying, you're getting to the dog sitters, the kids, that's
my
not
language
you
is
the,
said-
responsible adult.
Yeah.
But what is direct
well, what about the
supervision mean?
kid? I mean, there's kids
Yeah.
that have to take their dogs out,
Yeah.
that's not an adult.
Yeah, I know.
It's just under the control of someone.
Yeah.
Control of a responsible party or something.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
So the issue is how
Becau-
we take care of a problem when the dog is doing something other than, well, no.
But it's
can't
only
say
going to
that.
be enforced when it needs to be enforced.
Exactly.
They're not going to, like you
Yeah.
said, it's not going to be for the person unless their dog to go out in the bathroom in the morning. They're not going to ride around and say, ooh, somebody's.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they
right,
just need
exactly.
this when they need it.
Yeah. Can we use language like when the dog is exhibiting a threatening behavior to clarify that if the dog is just behaving normally in a yard, that there isn't a chance that this could be enforced? But if it's doing something that would be considered threatening in some way, then,
That would actually be under the dangerous dog.
I think
We
what
have
kind of
that.
scares
Yeah.
me is that you have neighbors that are pitting against each other,
Yes.
and this is another way
yeah.
that they will use to try to pit against.
And I do think you're right. We need to clarify in some way that it is okay for you to let your dog out in your yard.
I don't think
If it's
so.
gonna behave.
I think if that's the case, then they're going to decide that's the case, and I mean, just like the police do. There's people that pit their neighbors against everybody. What do? They figure out, well, it's another call from,
Yep.
I think they can deal with that. If that's the issue.
Yeah, we could. We can figure out those type of.
You're right.
So is the consensus then to insert something to the extent of under the direct supervision or control of a responsible party, and then it'd be like on a leash, invisible fence, shot collar?
Because I think if we get too much feedback and it's negative, then we can look at it again.
Sure.
We can change it again. If
Sure.
it doesn't work for
Yeah.
them, we can change it.
Okay.
But if that's what she's saying they need now,
Why not?
then why not? Yeah.
Well, how many calls like that do you get?
Few. Each week.
Really?
Yeah. It's pretty prevalent. And then, once we get the call, well, what are we gonna do now? The dog's back in his yard. What are we gonna do? Well, we can charge him with no city tag, because the ordinance allows us to do that. The ordinance allows us to pick up the dog for no city tag and impound it. But it doesn't allow us to tack on dog at large on that ticket, along with no city tag. So, that doesn't make much sense.
Well, I'm just concerned about the innocent guy, not the, that's who it's gonna hit.
I think that's where we trust you.
That's where we,
Yeah.
yes.
That's where it's gonna hit. I have a lot of dog at larges in my neighborhood that never get picked up. It is
don't
what
have
it
any.
is,
We don't have any
you know.
in ours.
And they tried to pick up my dog because it looked like another dog at large, and I had to prove to them that it was my dog, that it was. No, I'm serious, because it was a big black dog, and I might think that you guys have gotten called on that too. And I'm like, no, that wasn't my dog, and then they found that dog. So that's always who it hits. I don't know.
Well, I think we're on the right track with this.
Okay.
I'm not totally sure we've gotten where we need to be with it quite yet, but,
I can make some proposed revisions and then
Okay.
shoot those to you before we put it on the council agenda, just to make sure you guys are all okay.
yeah, because I do see everybody's points and that you need the ability to take care of issues, but at the same time, in a situation where people are looking for ways to poke each other, we want to take away those
Well,
tools.
it's
if we
just gonna
can.
hit my elderly that puts her little
Yeah,
dog out.
Sure, yeah. No, I
That
totally
little
get it.
old mean dog out to use the bathroom. And that kid comes down the street
Yeah.
to go get on the corner.
Yeah.
That's who it's gonna hit.
I would hope our animal control people are not
Right, we would have the
that
latitude
vindictive,
to
right?
enforce that correctly.
That
Yes,
being vindictive.
right.
Funny how the smaller the dog, the bigger the
The
attitude.
bigger the attitude, the bigger the bite.
Okay, then the next comment would be on page 4, and it's kind of along the same discussion lines as what we were just talking about. If you look in subsection 7, it would be the new 3, where it talks about no dog may be declared dangerous if any injury was sustained by a domestic animal under any of the following conditions. And animal control staff had asked that we add the dog injures or kills an animal trespassing on the property of the dog's owner, provided the dog is properly restrained on the owner's property.
Occasionally, we have situations like that where the dog is properly contained and Chihuahua gets underneath the fence and is killed by the dog that's in the fenced-in yard. We just want some language there to protect the dog while it's on its property, because it wasn't the dog's fault that the Chihuahua got in
Right.
there.
Yeah.
That's the
that makes
purpose
sense
of
to me.
this.
You okay with that?
So what happens now? The Chihuahua goes in, the dog kills him. What happens
The,
now?
the owner wouldn't be able to be charged with dangerous dog.
That's what
for-
happens
for-
now?
For killing the Chihuahua, yeah, if we inserted this language.
No, what happens now?
As far as,
There's nothing that happens to the dog now, is what you're saying? The owner gets charged, is that what you're saying?
no, the owner of the dog that killed the Chihuahua would not be charged with anything because he was properly restrained on the property. And the little Chihuahua went underneath the fence and this dog killed it.
But if
So-
it happened today, what would happen to the dog?
Actually, we do have language that's similar to this that would protect us.
Okay.
But it's kind of vague in that. I just want to make sure
So this just clarifies existing.
this
language.
clarifies.
Okay.
And I think the only question that I had on this one is the same situation. If you have a dog who's on its owner's property, unrestrained, and another dog comes onto its property and it kills it, this dog could still be in trouble because it doesn't have a shock collar or an invisible fence.
Or it's out in the front yard without a fence.
Right. So if it is on its own property and another dog comes on, even if it's unrestrained, should that dog then be declared dangerous if it's on its own property?
Within-
I mean,
And if
that's-
it's
Right,
not considered
right.
dog at large, would it be considered dangerous? Right? So that's where we really need that dog at large in there
I
too,
see.
like we were talking about earlier.
Do you
Yeah.
see, but do you get my argument on that,
Yeah.
though? It's like, if I had my dog and it was just in the front yard,
Yeah.
no fence, unrestrained, I wasn't there, but it's just sitting there nice, minding its own business, and another dog comes on and
Starts
agitates it,
provoking it, yeah.
and it kills or injures the dog, then it's kind of, that's counterintuitive that then I would be in trouble because that other dog trespassed onto my property.
Isn't that a civil suit?
So,
Isn't that a civil suit?
could be, yeah. I mean, obviously, you could argue it in
So
civil
are
court.
you saying then, Lisa, that every yard that has, everybody that has a dog needs a fenced-in or invisible
That's
fence?
that's kind of what the comment was. We discussed it, and we were concerned that that's what it requires. It's almost like, if the language is written this way, it's almost what
Right.
would be the case, and we don't know that that's,
Because that's not,
Accurate.
that's not gonna happen.
And
Right.
the other option is to tether it out, which really isn't an option because you can't be tethered out in an open area anyway. That's a violation in itself because the dog could get attacked.
Yeah.
And
No,
we
there's
see
no
that quite a
shade or-
lot too. We see that way too often.
But if you have a dog in a fenced-in yard, your own backyard, and it's not restrained, it's within the confines of your own fence, and a Chihuahua comes in, if we keep this restrained language in there, and that Chihuahua gets killed, but that dog was in its own backyard, not on a tether, not on a chain, I mean, that's just not it's hard to sell that.
I just didn't.
It's hard to sell that the dog was just protecting his property.
Yeah, the dog was inside its own fence, unrestrained. A Chihuahua came under the fence. Whatever happened, the Chihuahua passes away. The way this is written says properly restrained. Well, if you're in your own fence in your backyard,
That's
properly
properly
restrained.
restrained.
Yeah.
That is properly
Right.
restrained,
Right.
if it's in a fenced-in backyard.
Right.
Well, so it sounds like we still have some thoughts to go through on that initial point with what is the definition of properly restrained, essentially. So, okay. All right.
Okay. The next is on page 5, the definition of humane society. The only thing on this is, should there be perhaps a cross-reference here, just to say, see animal shelter, just so they can, we kind of use those interchangeably throughout, and the more I was thinking about it, I was thinking maybe we should cross-reference them. So if you're reading the definition of humane society, which says, means any animal shelter contracted with the city of Topeka that is licensed by the state, and then it says, see animal shelter, you can at least
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
go back and see that and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
animal shelter is any premises designated by a city administrative authority for impounding animals. Just to make sure that both are covered.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And the other bubbles pertain to the deletion of what was formerly subsection S, which was kennel. The same with deleting the reference to kennel under the definition of owner, which is subsection V. And that was brought up and suggested on June 12th. On page 6, the definition of secure enclosure in subsection BB, we worked on that a little bit after your June 12th meeting and kind of structured it so it was more applicable, or perhaps only applicable, Lisa, you can speak to that more, to dangerous dogs.
Secure enclosure should only apply to a dangerous dog
Right.
that's been found dangerous. Like a Chihuahua that, or Fluffy shouldn't be confined to a secure enclosure because they don't need to
Right,
be.
right,
You know,
right.
that should only apply to dangerous dogs.
We just wanted to make sure you guys were okay with that.
Mhm.
Okay. Page 7, 6.05050, I just put unless otherwise specifically provided herein, that's just legalese stuff, so. Then on page 8, we left in the comment about 50 versus 30. Don't have to increase it, but if there was any increase considered, that would be the amount suggested. And I was taking it from the last meeting we had that we were going to just leave it at 30, unless I'm wrong. Or were you thinking about increasing?
No, I thought at that time we decided 30
Why did we decide it was 30? I think 50 is a good idea.
was,
Why did we decide that?
Yeah, I don't know, it's been $30 for a long time, as long as I can remember.
maybe
never
it wasn't the
been.
fine, it was the registration costs, we decided.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Right.
So if you changed it to 50, it'd be consistent with 6.15.080. What is that? 6.15.
This is a
I
fine.
thought we changed it to 50.
That is the permit fee, actually.
Well, we didn't change the permit fee, we talked about it.
But it's 50, right?
Permit fee, 50 for what? The only permit fee that's $50 is when.
In,
dangerous dogs,
it's the
$50.
fine, actually, in subsection E on page 20. The fine is not less than $50.
So why wouldn't this be 50 then?
I'm fine with raising the fine to 50, I mean, the goal is to discourage people
That's
from having
right.
dangerous dogs.
Well, and
Well-
transportation handling, that's
Yeah.
what this is.
Transportation handling, though, is for any animal, like cat and dog that we transport to the shelter. We automatically put animal transport on the ticket.
Oh, I
And then
see.
that's just a fee. It's not really a violation. They have to pay that. If they're found guilty of the above charges, which is like dog at large, no city tag, then they have to pay the animal
I
transport.
don't know, I've had to pay those fees. I don't know if I want to pay the 50. I thought the 30 was high when I
Well,
paid it.
don't we waive that if they're properly registered anyway?
No,
No,
no.
because they've been charged with dog at large.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know.
yeah, you're welcome to come up.
So,
since you are
is it,
the
do you
first
see
one.
a reason to raise it or a reason that not to, or does it matter?
Would 50
Yeah.
more representatively reflect our costs
Yeah.
in actually doing that? I mean, I struggle with that because folks that are gonna struggle to pay that, now suddenly their costs are gonna get absorbent because that animal has to stay in the shelter longer.
Well, sometimes we transport more than one animal at a time, and each one of them,
Yeah.
if you want to look at it like that, is $30 per animal, like cat and dog.
So does 30 cover it, really?
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay.
I
then.
think it'd be okay.
just leave it.
Well, it depends on,
No, please.
Please.
check in with finance on that. I mean, it basically costs the city about $140 an hour for any of you that are on the street. We ran those numbers when we, at this point, about 6 years ago. The city fails to do that. But when we were looking at what the fines and administrative fees should be for code compliance, you take the whole department's budget and in simple terms, divide it by your frontline inspectors, because everybody else is backing them up, so that you factored in the cost of the truck and the supervisor and the training, and you not only do it by everybody on the front line, but most people, even though they get paid for 2,080 hours, only work about 1,750. When you deduct vacation and sick leave and holidays and training time, you end up with about 1,750 hours a person. And it can vary based on the job, but that's fairly typical with modern leave standards. And so when you're looking at what it really costs an hour and you're calculating fees or time, that's a better way to do it. Because, and you know, you don't just, we've been working on this on other things. I mean, if you spent 30 minutes picking up that dog, you still had to show up at work, get in the truck, drive over there, drive and drop it off. And so it's a little more efficient if you've got a truckload of dogs and cats than if you just have one. And so you work on some ways to average that out. And even if we choose not to charge the true cost, it is of great value to know what it is. Because in part, that means you're worth $140 an hour,
Right, right.
which is nice.
So I think 30,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think 30 is fine.
I mean, the only way to truly make this fair is make it income-based, which is a whole nightmare in and of itself, so, because otherwise, we're gonna disproportionately affect those folks that are lower income, and that's a whole other argument, so. What do you think, Ms. Ortiz, should we keep it at 30, or,
I think 30's fine.
30 is fine.
all right?
All right, then next is just some legalese I added in lines 266 to 267, which states in compliance with federal, state, and local law. And then next would be down into lines 285 through 289, which kind of elaborates a little bit on what a nuisance is, so that it gives the animal control folks a little bit more, I guess, guidance as to what they need to write down for the prosecutors when they are issuing that type of citation.
I think that's excellent, because that's a big concern that we hear anyway. You know, if somebody has 10 dogs in their backyard and they're not cleaning up after it, then absolutely, it's not going to be pleasant to live next door to.
And also, we have deleted reference to kennels everywhere else, and Councilmember Hiller had brought this up, and this is the only location where reference to kennels is still contained. So perhaps we should just, instead of saying kennels or any other areas in which animals
Just say
are allowed to
areas.
roam, just
Yeah,
say
I'm
any
fine
other
with that.
areas in which animals are allowed
Or just any.
to roam.
Because
You
it
know,
doesn't
just-
matter whether it's a
Okay.
kennel or a regular yard, if you're not cleaning up
Wherever
after
they
your pet,
are, if
then,
it stinks.
yeah,
okay.
yeah, no,
Gotcha.
I'm fine with that. I mean, the goal is to have things be clean.
Okay, all right. And then next is page 9. And that has to do with harboring animals on property upon which no person resides. And animal control rightly recommends that, it said previously, can't keep, harbor, or maintain more than one on a property that's not inhabited. And so they have crossed that out and suggest cannot maintain any. So that's okay.
The only thing I would wonder on that is if there is still any farmland in the city limits where they have horses or animals or something like that, where there isn't a residence.
Not to my knowledge. I wouldn't be able to tell you an address right off the top of my head on
Okay.
that. But we're just concerned that one animal's bad enough.
Sure,
That's
no,
a
I
life. We
agree,
might as well
you know, in a
just say
normal
any.
circumstance, the only thing I can think of is if there is still any urban farming left where, you know, they may have something out in a pasture.
That they're just keeping out on the pasture.
Yeah,
probably
you know, if
somewhere
a
else.
horse out on a pasture generally is fine, being unsupervised, so.
Only other thing I can think of is if somebody leaves a dog to guard their junkyard
And
or
that's what, yeah.
Well, that's down here, isn't it, Lisa? Animals maintained.
commercial
They're
business.
actually protected. Animals maintained.
Yeah.
For security purposes,
Yeah,
G.
that's already
Yeah.
protected.
Yeah, because I was the one who suggested
Yeah.
taking the one out, because it's like,
Yeah,
why would
no,
anybody do that?
Well, and I have a couple homeowners that are working on their house, and because we've got so much theft going on, they have a dog, and the house is boarded up or being repaired. And they have that dog there for protection. So I don't know if I kind of agree with that, because,
Well, what if we just took out the non-residential commercial and just said any animals maintained on properties for security purposes?
that
Would
would
be
be,
acceptable.
and I'm just saying, you know, I.
But people would all say it's for
They'd all
security.
say it. That would be our problem with that.
And the resident I'm thinking of, he had his windows broken out, he's had copper, all the piping, you know, so he finally went and got him a dog. And they stopped coming over there.
Can you talk about some of the instances now where you're having trouble in this area?
With only one dog on vacant
Right,
property.
yeah.
Typically, a lot of it's in North Topeka.
Uh-huh.
We get called over of a dog on vacant property, check the welfare. We go over there and we see 2 or 3 dogs.
Yeah.
And then we end up telling the people, well, you can have one dog, but you better choose what other 2 you want to take with you. That doesn't sound very good, because the other dog is just left for dead, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just,
So why do they have them there? Why, or do you know why they're choosing just to leave them there?
for various reasons, because they're too troublesome. It might be that they're the last to go because they're moving to another place. A lot of times you're going to cross that. They're moving, and they keep the dog there because they're too troublesome, and then they forget to go back for it.
Yeah, I like this the way it is.
And then what happens is they wind up getting neglected. People just
Yeah.
end up forgetting about them, or want to forget about them, and think, oh, animal control will come along and pick them up. We don't have to worry about him. If he dies in the yard, he dies in the yard. So that way, if we have this language in here, we can enforce it better. When we go to calls like that, if we can contact an owner, we'll say, you got to get him out of here.
If we took out the non-residential commercial so that they're being used for security purposes, do you all have enough latitude there to ascertain whether or not they're really being used for security purposes or they're just sort of abandoned?
We might be able to tell if the person's telling us the truth or not.
Because if it's an open field, there's nothing really there to secure. But at the same time, I see your point. If somebody has a house that they're actively working on, and the pet's well taken care of, and it's just staying in the house, so there's something there to dissuade intruders.
In that case, they would just say, we have furniture still in the house, we're still coming and going,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
So then it's
But if
technically
it's
occupied.
if it's a boarded up house and we can see that this house is vacant, and there's this
Yeah.
dog in the backyard that needs care, we need to go in and get after that dog and get it out of there.
So in Sylvia's example, if it was a residential house that clearly people were in and out of every day, even
Right.
if they weren't sleeping there, you all would probably let it go?
If they were in and out, yeah.
Well, and his house is boarded because they've broken out the windows to get in, to steal stuff, you know?
Well, that's actually a code violation anyway, because you can't have boarded up windows. Or I guess, no, just
You can if the
have
house is
broken windows.
uninhabited. It just has to be painted.
I'm like, what?
So, no, I'm thinking broken windows.
I haven't had lunch yet, but I And so what he was trying to prevent
Yeah.
is them to continue,
Yeah.
you know? And then if the neighbors heard the dog, then they'd know to look, to call, and it, anyway.
And we can't prove if they're sleeping there,
Yeah. Well, what's the definition of
Well, it was empty,
uninhabited?
he wasn't sleeping there, so.
uninhabited, with people, nobody living there. And
But if
There's
you're,
no
if you're in
evidence
and
of-
out,
no
then, I
evidence
mean,
of,
technically, nobody
like,
lives in
furniture.
commercial space,
Yeah.
but it's inhabited.
We used to say if there was like a bed
Yeah,
in a room,
Yeah.
but that's getting kind of personal.
Yeah.
As those kind of things. But if we were able to get inside the house legally,
Yeah.
and we saw a bedroom that was outfitted with a bed, it looked like somebody's been sleeping there. And the people said, well, I'm not here most of the time, but I do sleep here, you know, but the dog is physically okay, then
Yeah.
we would say that's good.
So how many of these security purpose dog calls do you get?
You're
I would
really
s-
getting the
Very
neglect
few.
ones is
I
the
would
problem.
say,
You've got to
if
have a
you
way
need
to say
this,
no.
if you need this to know and to be able to get to the dog that people have left, then we need to leave this. If the other's not an issue, then I don't think we need to address it.
well, so
Yes.
the proposal is to change it so that nobody can leave just one dog behind.
Right.
That's the big,
Yeah,
Right.
so,
that's the purpose of this.
Mm-hmm.
No dogs left behind.
that's
No
right.
dogs
No
left.
dogs left behind.
Well, and realistically, you're probably not going to make a call on that property unless there are odors or people are concerned that the dog doesn't have water, doesn't have shelter,
Yeah.
is neglected.
Right.
If somebody's over there taking care of it, then.
Right, it's probably
Right.
not going to be
They
a
may not
problem.
call in if they know somebody's there.
Mhm.
You're right.
Would it be worth it to insert the word abandoned anywhere in there? So that, I mean, because, like I say, generally in those cases where it's the last left, it is usually abandoned. And would that clarify in your case? Because clearly the dog is not abandoned if it's, guarding an active project.
But if you go out there and you initial visit, how are you going to determine if it's really abandoned?
Well, that's a good point.
You need to leave a notice and then go back and see if the notice is still there posted.
Yeah,
And then you may be able to.
yeah. Meantime, the dog
by
is suffering.
that
Right.
it's
So,
abandoned.
well,
I think it's fine. I vote for the way it is.
so the way it is leave a dog behind. And we're,
You mean the way
It
it's
says
marked?
maintain any,
well, that's
Yeah.
that's the change.
yeah.
That's
what
what
I
she
vote
said.
for.
Leave no
Okay,
dog.
I got you. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Okay, then the next comment would be on page 10, the top of the page. Animal Control's just asked that we delete this entire section that talks about the sale or transfer by certain breeders, just because this is, again, referencing back to the kennel
Okay.
situation. The next would be at the bottom of the page where it talks about cruelty to animals and specifically protection from the elements. We've deleted the words appropriate to the local climatic conditions for the species concerned, but then there was some question about whether or not perhaps we should leave that in.
What's natural shelter? What's a natural shelter?
A tree.
Any shelter that they can get into that would meet the ordinance, basically.
Because I want to figure out the dogs, I got the calls on last winter that had a pile of hay, and it was 20 degrees, and it was okay.
Just a pile of hay for the shelter.
Yeah. So where is, and
Well, if
where
it was
does
like-
that come
If
in?
it was blocked in, but it'd have to have some type of roof.
Yeah.
The elements can't get in.
Okay,
But
so,
if it's a structure where they can get in and keep warm, and they have straw or hay, and it's like, what, 6-sided or 5-sided at least.
and what if it's under a deck? Under a deck
You know,
with a
that's
pile of
caused
hay?
a lot of problems too. People think that's adequate, and they can't keep the body heat. and
Yeah.
Retain the body heat when they're underneath just a porch. They have to be more enclosed to retain.
So what are you saying is a natural shelter?
It could be anything natural or artificial, could be, what, a doghouse, could be anything that's made
But a
by
natural,
somebody, anything. This has been in the ordinance for a long time, the word natural.
Yeah.
It's like, what really does natural constitute? you know?
Perhaps we should just say
We could leave.
a shelter.
Yeah.
Eliminate.
What about
Period.
if we
Yeah.
just said an enclosed shelter?
but then what's enclosed? Is it
Right.
enclosed 4 sides,
Well-
3 sides, 2 sides?
That's more so on the next page, on 11.
it?
It talks a little bit about,
And
I see here.
and there wasn't
Moisture and
anything-
windproof. Okay.
you said about the local climatic conditions, but what would you consider in the winter months to be too cold to just have a pile of straw?
And that's what we were deciding on. The tether ordinance is 40 degrees, but we don't have any temperature for just when a dog is outside. It's just what we feel is too cold to have hay and straw.
Well, that's
and
going to
things
change
in
by
the
the
house.
breed, too.
And-
I mean, if you have a short-haired dog,
Yeah,
they're not going to be able to withstand the
Right.
same thing as like a husky who's
And that's-
built for
Yes.
freezing temperatures.
So maybe you need to say at the discretion, although I've disagreed with some animal control officers when they said, nope, it's got enough.
What about appropriate for the breed?
that's what it's basically saying. Appropriate to the local climatic conditions for the species concerned,
Yeah.
like huskies
Yeah.
wouldn't require as much shelter
No.
as a Chihuahua.
But then
a
what,
Short-haired breed.
then what do people do when they disagree with animal control?
We have.
Too bad.
people- Too bad.
I
We do
know.
an investigation
Well, I
and change it.
disagreed.
And if they don't change it, depending upon the circumstances, they can be charged with cruelty.
Well, but a vet should be able, I mean,
And then it would be up to the
as a
judge to
doctor,
determine
yeah.
what he felt was appropriate.
So it says shelters so they have to have the shelter with straw, hay, or cedar, provided a clean, suitable bedding inside the shelter?
Right.
So they have to have a shelter. And a shelter means something with a roof and sides on it?
Sides on it. Mhm.
So it can't be out on a deck in a pile of hay?
Right. Because there's nothing to
Or under
retain
the
the
deck.
body heat, because if they're not enclosed enough to retain that body heat, they're still gonna get cold. If they're like on top of the deck and there's some straw next to them,
Mm-hmm.
it's not adequate shelter. You have to have a top.
I
and
agree. I
sides
think
and-
so too.
Yeah. no holes to where the elements, the rain,
Right.
snow can get in. And, we look at the shelter really well. If
So-
we see holes, we say, a lot of people
Right.
provide carriers, and that's not adequate because
No.
there's holes in the
Yeah.
carrier. So,
And she's just saying that last winter, somebody from your team approved a dog under a deck.
You remember that too?
Oh, I was just listening to you, and I'm remembering back, Sylvia's kind of wig-wagging me over here. We really, the team of animal advocates really worked this section last time, and I'm not sure why there was a determination to change it, but the language that's there made reference to the animal type, and it didn't describe what kind of structure it had to be, just said had to be moisture-proof and wind-proof, suitable to the of suitable size to accommodate the animal and allow retention of body heat, which then gets you into that dynamic in between the size and the type of animal, and shall be made of durable material with a solid floor. They'd worked really hard to agree, and then just B was the different kinds of bedding, again, to promote insulation, protect against cold and dampness, gave the group thought back then enough criteria for AC to be able to go in and say, there's not enough to retain body heat, or it's not durable enough, or it's not windproof enough, or to say, underneath the porch doesn't work.
right.
What are the
And the
terms?
only thing on, this top of page 11, it just states that subsection A3(3) was simply reworded to make it easier to read and follow. So if you look up here at the top, it says, "Shelter shall be made of durable material that is moisture-proof, wind-proof, with a solid floor, suitable size to accommodate the animal.
But you-
Suitable bedding material, hay, straw, seed, or shavings, equivalent to promote insulation, protection against cold and dampness, and promote retention of body heat."
But
So it says all the same things.
But it
just in a
separated
different
the
whatever.
"and" in that first sentence in terms of the right size and to accommodate the body heat. It separated them, they were together.
I don't,
Because when you leave just accommodate the animal, it's like, well, if you can get that shepherd in the door, it's good enough. Or, if it's big enough, you can get a Pomeranian in a big doghouse too, but it's not the right thing for a Pomeranian to retain their body heat. So that was kind of what I caught when I was reading it again in terms of the wordsmithing that the team had done before.
Where is, I'm sorry, tell me where that is.
I see what you're talking about. On section A, the previous
Is it in
language states, it shall include a
367?
moisture-proof, blah, 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 accommodate the animal and allow retention of body heat.
Yeah, they're
But it
bracketed
also
together.
still says that animals will be provided with clean, suitable bedding material, consisting of hay, straw, blah, 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 equivalent to promote and protect against cold, dampness, and promote retention of body heat.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have the "and," because I do agree, you're right. I mean, if you put a huge box out there, a little tiny dog, they're never gonna eat that sucker up. So,
I just, that's why
yeah.
it was phrased that way at the time.
Yeah.
And I think we lost the link between the shelter size,
And the
accommodating the
retention of
animal.
body heat.
and-
Well, I would think that would be your knowledge. If you go and have a Pomeranian in a big house, you're gonna
Right.
know it doesn't.
Right.
Fit
So-
the bill.
So you're saying like a Chihuahua should have a small doghouse?
Well, I
Maybe a
think
pug should have a
probably
medium
people
size.
would argue that the Chihuahua shouldn't be outside if it's 20
Period.
below.
That's also an issue.
There's that too.
So the way I read this is basically it's saying that you need both what was both item A and B together to promote protection against cold, dampness, and to promote retention of body heat. So basically what it's saying is you can't have a shelter or, some sort of bedding. You must have them together working in concert
Yeah.
to promote all that. Because otherwise, in theory, you could do one or the other because again, both items are not required to be together.
So perhaps in line 367, after it says suitable size to accommodate the animal, period, then you put in addition, comma, animals will be provided with clean, suitable bedding. If you want to require both.
Well, and let me clarify something for the committee here. When we worked on this at that particular time, we had one one animal control officer come out and say, look at it and say, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. And then we'd have another one come out, and they'd say, we're gonna come back and check it. And then another one was like, oh, you didn't have to do this, this, and this. So they were inconsistent. And we were trying to bring some consistency to that. Whereas at that particular time, and I can testify to that because I get called on my dog all the time. He doesn't have any hay in there. He doesn't have any water. He doesn't have any food. He doesn't have this. And so every animal control officer that came to my house, I had somebody say, you got to put bricks in. You got to take out the bricks. You got to put, and I have, I put it on a, what do you call it,
Pallet?
the pallet. I put his dog, because I just can't stand to put it on the ground. I had somebody say, you gotta take the pallet out. No, you gotta put the pallet in. And so at this particular time when we were working on this, we wanted some consistency because for them guys, it's unfair because I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
This is what I need to do. This is this. I have a dog run from him. I even ordered a thing for the top of his house, and so that's what we were looking at. Because it's not really, if it's not here, it's not really fair to them. Because the owners, as in my case, me, was screaming, okay, the other guy just said I need to tear all this out. Now you're saying I need this. And so we needed it more consistent.
Also, the language appropriate to the local climatic conditions for the species concerned wasn't like Kansas versus Georgia. It was,
Right.
if it's raining and 45 degrees, what's appropriate? If it's snowing and 10 below, what's appropriate? If it's summertime and it's 100 degrees and still, what's appropriate? So that's why that language was in there. So
Right.
that, again, to give the ACOs a tool
And
to use to make their judgment and stick by it.
Like appropriate for a husky, like
Yeah.
when it's
Well,
cold, or
and-
Alaska Malamute?
And that's what I was gonna
Right.
say. I have a lab. And if I put that hay in there, when it's about 25, 30, he pulls it all out. But because of his coat and it's,
Dense.
there you go. So then my neighbors are like, she ain't got no hay in his house because it's all outside. 'Cause so,
That happens.
so that's got to be very
She's our
important.
test rat.
So when it gets cold, he'll allow it to be in there, but when it's not, or if it gets hot and cold. So that's got to be very specific here, that we make sure of that.
So how about at the bottom of page 10, where it talks about protection from the elephants? Holy cow. It says,
All right.
it says,
We had an issue with
I did not know
holy cow,
that.
is that covered in here?
We are going to be here a
We
while.
just got two more.
It says, how about we reword it to say, a shelter appropriate to the climatic conditions existing at the time for the species concerned, so that it addresses what the weather is right then. I think that's what Karen was saying.
I think that's what was intended at first.
Okay, let's see how that works then. And then on the second page, at the top of 11, if we add in addition, comma, animals will be provided with a clean, suitable bedding to make sure that both of those are required.
I'm fine with that. Because that covers what we're trying to do, is make sure that they've got everything they need.
And this is a matter of how you write things. I think the thought, again, not that everything has to happen the way, is that it's easier to read bullets. It's easier, this is my view, but one that's long seasoned, is that we're writing this not just for the lawyers and the ACOs, but for training ACOs, but for citizens, so that they can look in there and say, okay, what are the rules for how I take care of my dog?
Okay.
And I think the A and the B, unless there's a reason to combine them into a really long paragraph, really make it easier to,
I think.
Yeah,
you're
I'll
right.
separate this paragraph out into subsections, the top
Then
paragraph.
you have your list of requirements.
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
All right. The next comment bubble is further on down in subsection 6, and that's just language to refer the reader to violation of state statute, because animal fighting is covered in the state statutes. And I didn't want to put a specific number in there just because they change, and I didn't want to have to go back and amend the code every time. The statute might change, so I'm referring them back.
Mr. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I had one other question on the section that we just left. And Lisa could tell us whether it's an issue, but we've included some stuff about heat, which I think is good. But is there an issue for ventilation?
In enclosures?
Yeah.
Sometimes there can be.
Yeah, and I wondered if we should just stick in a little something about ventilation when it's so hot.
Yeah, Lisa and I were talking about that, and we could certainly do that.
Well, like,
Problem,
you know,
just
even
in that
using,
building.
going back to Councilwoman Ortiz's example, one of the ACOs along the way, if I recall correctly, said, oh, well, drape a tarp over the whole kennel so that it keeps the sun out, but
Right. But
draping
then
the
they
whole
won't
thing
be able
with
to
a
breathe.
tarp
Yeah.
cut down the breeze too. And
Yeah.
so, but in the garages, you've added some garage language that I think really helps that. I remember us
Yes.
being warned about that. But you just don't want an animal in some stifling, breathless.
Right. I recommended that to Lisa after your recommendations.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was a good idea for an
Well, I-
extension to the dwelling, like a garage or a shed.
Yeah, and I guess I had thought that maybe the adding the language about ventilation where when sunlight is likely to cause overheating, sufficient shade, blah, 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 and ventilation should be provided, might be
And then we can,
somewhere.
Because my dog's kennel or run sits to the west, and when the sun's going down, you know, it gets to a point where he doesn't have anything there. So I've put a tarp on that west side, but I've had an AC tell me I need to take it off. And I'm like, I'm not taking it off, you know, because it provides shade all the way through that when the sun's going down for those 3 hours.
I don't know why they'd say to take it off.
No, I'm just saying before, not recently, but before, to let all the air flow through.
I see what you're saying.
And even though I have something on top that I ordered, but it's still, that goes to the east as well. When the sun comes down, it all, you know, that shade is perfect through the day, but about 4:30, it's all sun,
Right.
even with something on top. Yeah.
Just playing with something in that section, I
Yeah.
think will do it.
Yeah.
But they're just-
Common sense
So-
ventilation.
Yeah.
Right.
We
Yeah.
could just put that in there.
But I mean, it depends on how the kennel's set, or,
Well,
You know
what if
how-
we said ventilation where appropriate?
yeah.
Because that gives you the leeway to say, you know, this is where you really need ventilation, that
Right.
sort of thing. So-
Right.
But yeah,
That would
I
be
do, I like that, because you're right. In some cases, you'll cook them unless there's some kind of moving air,
Yeah.
so.
It's just as bad.
Okay. Top of page 12, there were revisions made to the references to how a dog can be tethered that animal control had requested.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
All too often, a dog is tethered to a fence or near a fence, and we get a call that the dog is hanging. By the time we get there, it's dead because it hung itself. So I was wanting language to make sure that they're not tethered close to a fence or even to a fence and tangled. Strangulation. So I think we would just add just a couple words to just change that a little bit. To make it more sensible than the previous.
So would that allow
Oh.
them, if we change that, to not allow them to be tethered to a fence, is what you're saying?
To a fence,
Right.
because they will inevitably jump it and hang, strangle.
But what if they put that stake by the fence? That's gonna,
Well, it can't be in
Stick.
proximity of,
Yeah, no, right,
yeah.
not in close proximity to a fence, to where the chain is long enough that the animal could jump the fence and hang itself.
I mean, I think that's a good idea, because I've had a dog that I literally watched try to climb the fence, and I was out there, thank God, he raced over it and saved him, but.
So
A lot of
so
dogs
you're
do
saying
that.
that this proposed change is satisfactory?
Yes,
It looked good to me.
okay.
And then just a little bit farther down in subsection C, we just added animal control officer to this list, which it should be, so
Yeah.
that helps. Top of page 14, animal control thought that this mistreatment of young fowl, rabbits, and other animals was already sufficiently covered by cruelty to animals. So proposed deletion. Okay. Page
It's duplicate language. It's covered under general animals.
under cruelty to animals. Then page 15, the committee had requested deletion of this subsection C, because quite frankly, I don't know why we didn't catch that, but it didn't seem to make sense there. So Lisa and I talked and agreed that, yes, that made,
It doesn't make any sense.
sense.
Dogs are the ones that do all the fighting.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't include dogs.
And then on further down, on the deceased animals, subsection B, there had been discussion about whether or not animal control versus some other entity could pick up deceased animals in certain circumstances. And the first idea was to contact Shawnee County Parks and Rec, which Lisa did, but they said we don't do that. And then the other suggestion that she had mentioned, which I just put question mark, was perhaps having one of the inmate crews do that. So
Did you talk to Sasha or Code or anything about that?
I have,
No, I have not.
Well, what if we said like contractor or designate or something like that? Because there's no reason to have you go out and pick up a squirrel.
I agree.
So in that case, you know, if the city has some entity or some group that would do that, then that would give the flexibility for city management to do that, and that way we can conserve your time
Right.
for areas where you really need.
Cruelty investigations.
Yes, yeah.
Investigating dangerous
Well,
dog.
what would they do with the animal if somebody else picked it up?
Just dispose of it.
Same thing.
Well-
With the Shawnee County
They-
Waste.
Same thing.
Waste
Same thing.
management, we
Yeah.
have a contract with Waste
Okay.
Management. We have a
There we go.
dumpster out there that we dump all the dead animals.
But would that allow them to do that if we had a
We would have to-
designee?
We would have to mention something
Mhm.
in the
Contract.
ordinance or otherwise that's where they would go to dump them. And
Well,
since
but
we
that-
already have a
that would be-
contract. with
Yeah, it
them,
would just be with our existing contract essentially. So,
Right.
And that's a
And we're
management.
just basically asking for wildlife to be picked up on public roadways.
Yeah.
We would pick up domestic, like cats and dogs. so
Right.
We can check for microchips and see if they have an owner, so we can give the owner closure, so we can tell them their animal
Mm.
died.
Yeah.
Is deceased. But roadkill like squirrels, possums, raccoons, we get them on a daily basis and so many of them. We got other things to do,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
How many?
Oh my gosh, at least probably 4 or 5 a day. Yeah, that many, because there's always dead squirrels.
Yeah.
Dead possums, you see them all the time. Every time you get in your car and drive around, there's one, at least, you see a mile from each other. Squirrels are
Did you get my
abundant.
little fox on Golden?
I haven't been out on the street for a while. One of my people may have.
You
though.
got it.
Did Fox?
She was beautiful. Ooh. Did she get hit? There's one little fox. My fox at large.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
had
ma'am.
had a comment on that. If you've got them and you want to say them, I don't have to talk that much, but from a management point of view, I didn't know how many you had, but rather than in the code detail the management decisions about whether we would use some other resource, my thought had been that since animal control is trained how to pick up the animals, how to transport them, how to dispose of them, and the inmate crews or whoever else you might find are not, plus you're already going up with whatever you picked up anyway to dispose of the carcasses, and already have the permits and so on, that perhaps that decision could be left to be a management decision. There's nothing that would prohibit animal control from contracting with the corrections department or somebody else to do that, but it's always going to come back to you all anyway if there's some roadkill out there. And so leaving it the responsibility of the animal control unit, then if you subcontracted it out, fine, but at least there's a point of contact within the city government that is responsible always. And that way you'd be responsible truthfully for the training and the oversight to make sure if you did find somebody else to do it, that they were doing a good job and that it was cost effective and all that.
We would want the first call for a wild animal to go to that certain department, whatever department would be named at the time.
You'd
But
want
we
that
could
to
al-
happen,
we
but
could
they're going
always
to
be a
call you
backup.
anyway.
Yeah, we could always, pick something up if we saw it, but as far as getting the calls and having to respond to them, and then there's the problem of going to another call where we talk to people out on the street and we have this stinky dead animal on our truck, and the people are just like, oh God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And they can't stand there and talk to us while we're trying to professionally investigate a case.
How is this all dispatched now? Is it just,
People call into our dispatcher saying there's a dead squirrel, like,
Okay.
for instance, at 17th and Washburn.
so then they call you all out?
Yeah, and then we have a long list of other calls that we need to tend to, and all of a sudden, we get this dead squirrel call at 17th and Washburn, and we gotta be mindful of it, we gotta make sure it's taken care of.
So basically, you're advocating for that central dispatch to have the authority to either call out you in the instance where it's necessary, or if it's a squirrel, a different department, so you
Different
guys-
department. If it's domestic, like a cat or a dog, then call us, because we need to figure out if the animal has an owner. And
Gotcha.
check for microchip, check for tags, report it to the shelter.
So what my proposal would be is that you all, realistically, you all should still be responsible for all of that, but giving you the authority to contract that out and then have, set it up however is most efficient, then, for a squirrel, there's no reason for,
And see, I don't think that has to be addressed in the ordinance at all.
No,
or
agreed.
that
They
it
just
even
need the
should be.
authority to be able to do that if they so choose.
But, legals,
I think that I agree with you that they're gonna call animal control.
Anyway.
And that's who they're gonna call. So I think animal control is probably going to end up having to be the first point of contact. Now, whether or not animal control says, okay, we are under contract with such and such entity, and here's their number, and contact them.
Right.
And then if that person under that contract doesn't do what they're supposed to do by the time they're supposed to do it,
sort of like
we'd have
neighborhood relations
recourse.
Right. It would
with their
take-
abatement crews.
Yeah, it
They've
would
got
take-
some in-house crews, they've got
And
inmates,
just
and they
route
make the call.
appropriately.
Right. It would take some time to figure out who to call, but we have that time.
Well, when you guys get a call now, do you log it in any sort of fashion, like a trouble ticket type system?
We just log it as a dead wildlife, dead
Okay.
animal, like we pick up
Is
a dead
that,
rabbit.
would that technology be capable of routing that call to some other entity automatically? So when the person answering the phone gets it, they just put it on the computer, same as if it was going to you, and then it would just go
Right.
out to
If-
that third-party company?
Yeah, if our dispatcher got it, they would program it to us on the MDT. They would just say, animal control call.
Given the fact that we don't have a contract with anybody and we really haven't
Yeah.
thought about who that might be, and we're gonna have to go through that process, maybe we just say here, animal control.
Or
say,
designate?
it shall be the responsible of animal control to adequately address the removal. Then, prior to the contract, they can take care of it. Once we have a contract, they have the number that they
That's
can forward the call to, they can handle it appropriately at that point. Because it may take a while to identify somebody,
Right.
if it's not the inmate crew, and to
Yeah.
put
Well,
together the terms of the contract.
Inmate crews are not available on demand, and we
They
all
aren't.
know that.
And so it's a
You know,
timeliness
Yeah.
issue.
Not only not on demand based on what they do, but if there's no supervisor or somebody acted up, they're not out anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's just how the inmate crews go. So maybe there's another resource, but
Well, and if we really have 4 or 5 a day, I wonder if we need to dedicate someone just to do that.
that's not very many if that's all you're doing and you don't know when they're gonna happen.
You might just put
true.
it up for an RFP and see if anybody's
Yeah,
interested.
well, and that.
There you
that's
go,
true, yeah.
entrepreneurs.
Well, but I do like the idea. At the end of the day, though, I
I'm
think
serious.
the argument is that you guys should indeed be doing the stuff that you all are good at, and this other,
Right, this, yes.
we can farm that out, so,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
Privatize.
So the next comments are on page 19. And the first one is in 6.15060, under subsection A. It's basically deleting the reference to a fee for the kennel or pet shop. And then in subsection C, we added a reference to permit fees for kennels, if any, are addressed in state statute. So if somebody goes to our ordinance and is looking for, what do I do with, what do I need to pay for my kennel? They're like, oh, that's in the state statute, so. Then the next is top of page 20. And that was something that Councilmember Hiller brought up. I think it's a good idea as far as notifying folks by electronic mail if they have email in addition or in lieu of their street address.
But I'm gonna say I never got that, what I'm gonna say. If you say you
Delinquency.
emailed me,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't
Well,
get
but you
it.
could make the same argument but by US mail, because there's no tracking mechanism in that either.
They don't have to sign?
No, so.
You could do a read, a read.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
You can.
right
I mean,
now it
there's
says
ways of
and.
tracking.
So you have to do,
you
right
can
now it says
too.
and.
Oh, you have to do both?
It says email and US mail.
And US mail.
Because an
I
email
actually
really wouldn't take
recommended
that much,
that.
right?
Yeah.
It
But
wouldn't
if it's,
take that much to
it
do
depends,
both.
if it's a courtesy notice,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and you work on the language on your forms that says it's up to you to remember to renew this.
yeah.
And
It
then-
is.
Then consider, I don't know if the language needs, just
Yeah.
that it's a courtesy notice, then,
Well, and, you know, the other option is giving people the ability to opt out of regular mail. You know, if I want to get my bills electronically, then that's my option, but then there's no reason we shouldn't have to mail something if people don't want it.
again, if it's a
So-
courtesy notice, yeah.
Yeah.
And partly of our earlier conversation was the fact that, you know, now that we have the electronic
Yeah,
permitting in the first place, and it asks you for an email address and has the ability to spit
Yeah.
out notices too, that's different. We didn't have that when
Right.
this
Yes.
was written
Agreed.
before, so, yeah, however that would work.
cool.
Okay. Then on page 20 still, down in 6.15090 under tag, this language was added to address situations that may occur with indoor-outdoor cats that don't wear collars. So that was put in there. And do you all want to talk about the tag questions that you had about the replacement tag? There's a
I read
tab in
that.
here.
I read that.
Under the license and tag info. There's a chart that the TPD folks put together that kind of shows,
So we have 7,000 people, right, that tag? Is that how I read that, total licenses? 7,000? Out of how many?
There's- What page are we on? I just want to make sure we're looking at the
yeah,
right
you're-
page.
So it's this
on the-
other
on the
section,
License and tag info.
total licenses.
Well, there's pet data mail and pet data online.
Lisa, in there, can we, my dog won't keep his tag on. He bites it off and everything, and then I have to go buy a new tag. But, now one of the, I don't know if it's legal, but one of the ACs said, you know, just, be able to present it to us if we come out. I'm tired of buying tags. He just chews it all up. So can we insert that for people to make sure, you know, because they're saying it has to be on the collar.
It
well, if they don't write a citation. then-
It does say it has to be.
That's
on the collar,
mandatory.
But
So what if if a dog is chipped, then you have the identification to get it back to the owner. So in that case, then you could, because the original purpose of the tag.
No, I'm talking about his rabies tag.
Oh,
His rabies tag. They're saying that am I correct, Lisa, that's mandatory, that has to be on the collar?
the rabies tag,
Oh,
no,
well,
just the
see,
city
I was
tag.
told it was, okay, well,
Used to be rabies tag, but
I'm sorry? Okay, well, the city license is required, well,
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
one, he won't keep it on.
I'm okay with making that producible on demand if they're chipped.
Yeah, I have it in my kitchen drawer so I can,
Yeah.
you know,
well, if you ended up getting a ticket for it, you'd take it to court and they'd just dismiss it anyway.
I
If
don't
you
wanna
had
go-
a
I don't
tag
wanna go
prior
that
to the
far.
dog being picked, yeah, I see.
I don't wanna go
He's
that far.
confirming.
Yeah.
That's
Usually if they can provide a tag by the time they come to court, we're pretty easy to work with.
okay.
Well, the goal
It's
is not
usually a
to-
dog at large ticket with a tag attached to it, so we make them get the tag and then they pay for the dog at large if there's a transport fee and go that route.
I mean, he's in his kennel, but I'm saying if they come out to a call, I've been asked, where's his tags at? Like in my drawer in the kitchen, because he won't keep it on, 'cause-
I mean, in that
That's-
situation.
Oh, so if he doesn't otherwise,
That's
he's not getting a
fine.
citation otherwise, they just
no.
come out? Well, I think
Yeah,
he
'cause I
should
got
be
a neighbor
okay
that
with a
calls.
tag.
He used to call once a week, he's kind of stopped, hasn't he, Ms. Pinkley?
Yeah, that's just part of the call. We ask for to see city tags. And if you
Right,
have-
right, but I'm saying, they call on me, and that's part of it, they ask, yeah, they do ask for his tag,
Right, yeah, that's procedure,
right.
because it's a violation if you don't have one.
I
But
understand
But
that,
if you have one on record and it's not, we don't necessarily have to see it on the collar, especially
Okay.
if the dog's contained.
Why does this say you can show it for a cat, but not anything else?
Because people don't like putting collars on their cats because they can strangle themselves.
Well, people don't like
People-
putting them on
people
their
lose
dog
it
either.
and-
Your dogs don't climb trees.
Because I,
I'm always
I wondered
dogs
about
have
that.
Well, I'm
it.
not
My
opposed to
cats
making it producible
lost their
for a
collar.
dog either.
Right. provided
trying
if
to make it
an
easy for AC.
animal's
Yeah.
not wearing a collar, that
Identifiable.
Well, but
owner
if they're
must be able to
chipped, then-
produce a tag.
Because we have those readers.
I know.
A bunch of people kept talking.
Sorry.
So if, would that be difficult if we said, however, if an animal's not wearing a collar, owner must be able to produce a tag upon request? Is that gonna be a hassle? If you go up and,
No,
No.
if they come pick up their animal at the shelter and they bring city license information, we'll just go ahead and void that off the ticket.
but like Ms. Ortiz said, if you walk up and their dog doesn't have it,
Right.
and you say, well, let me see the tag, is that gonna be a hassle to do that?
No, if she produces the tag, that's fine.
So let's just put,
That's actually good if she does. That way we know she has a current city license and she's not in violation.
so provided, however, that the animal, if an animal's not wearing a collar, the owner must be able to produce a tag?
Well, the question is, for administrative purposes, is it already, is it okay? Or is it broken, we need to fix it?
No, I don't think it's broken. I think it's fine. It does, they
So what
really,
is a? I
But,
don't
but you're
understand
saying
that.
it's procedure. and-
Ordinance requires you to have that
Right.
tag
Right.
according to this. So
Right.
we're advocating for changing it to
Right.
producible.
And it's talking about off premises too. So if the pet is off premises, they have to, which
Yeah, but I
here
don't
would
wanna
be a
put
dog
my
or.
dog's tag
Well-
on his collar just to take him for a walk.
Yeah.
right, well, if it's off premise, it should be bearing a tag. But what I,
But
what
then
I
I've
was
gotta
talking
put a-
about is like Ms. Ortiz, if you had your dog at home and I was checking the welfare of it
Yeah.
and it didn't have a tag on the collar.
Which he don't.
So
Okay,
where would that
but
be
you
at in
produced
here?
your license, your paper license to me and said, here's my license.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Is that in
That's
here
not a problem.
somewhere?
On premises is not
Okay.
addressed in here. It's only if it's off premises.
Okay.
That it has to, says that the
Wearing-
tag has to be on for the little mini pig and the
Right.
dog. But if it's a cat, you just have to produce it upon request if they don't have it on their collar.
So our question is whether or not we should just make it produce it for everybody.
Mm-hmm,
Rather than having it on the collar.
mm-hmm.
Right. Because for Miss Ortiz, she'd have to put the tag on the collar to take it for a walk.
His butt ain't going for no walk. You know what I
He's
do?
gonna take
I
you
let
for a
him
drag.
out. Close your ears. I let him out and he runs. Because I got fields and he comes back. It's like, he's done it since he was a baby, but he will not keep that tag on.
Well, if it's bearing a city tag while it's off the premise and we pick it up,
Yeah.
run and loose, we can run the tag and see who it belongs to.
You can also do that with
Oh,
a chip.
So it's for identification
Yeah.
purposes.
Yeah, the idea is to return the pet.
Well, so,
Or if it has a microchip, we can identify.
well, and so that's what we would say, is so if your dog is chipped, then that gives you the ability to just
To
produce the tag. Because you've already got the identification component, which I agree is a valuable part of that city tag.
True,
So
but
if
some
an
people-
owner
yeah, some-
chooses not to have their animal tagged all the time, they can chip it and it'll accomplish the same thing, but they still must produce the city tag on demand.
Right. Some people don't microchip.
Agreed, yes, but this gives them the option.
50% of people
Yeah.
probably don't.
And it sounds like 90% of people don't register their pets. We only have 7,000 in the entire city.
Yeah.
Oh my
Out of
gosh.
how many
That's
do you
the
think?
estimate of how many,
That's how many people are registered according to this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we have 200,000 pets. If not,
Actually, the numbers have gone up. since
have
we
they
were-
really?
Yeah.
I agree
I
with
thought
you on
that was-
Because
so-
our population is, what, 130,000 people?
yeah, but most people have multiple pets.
Yes, yes.
We have 57,000 households or something like
Yeah.
that, but isn't the average like 4?
Per household,
Yeah,
probably.
So now we're
Oh, go
200,000.
campaign.
At least
Tell me.
one.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
So that would be
Sorry.
200,000 pets.
All right. Okay, so the next page then, at the top of 21, we deleted the references to kennel for
Hold
the
on,
same
where's
reasons.
21?
Top of page 21. It's lines 721 to 722. And that note just references the fact that we deleted reference to kennel.
Okay.
At the bottom of page 21, we just made some clarifications, but there's also a note here that discusses logistics.
Come on in.
That talks about logistics, about if you go into the LEC and you want to get a tag, then, or if you're at the animal shelter, should you be able to get everything like more of a one-stop shop as far as filling out your permit applications and the like. So it'd have to be something that we maybe that's just addressed administratively, some kind of internal policy or procedure, rather than in the code, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. They need to get it first before they get their
Before they
animal.
get their dog.
Yep.
And they can get it there. I mean, that's what I read, was your concern that they couldn't. And long ago, that was the case. But now that you can get it online, you can do it anywhere.
Well, and Lisa had expressed that concern about
Wasn't that
logistics.
part of getting your dog out, though, that was added to your,
Out of the shelter?
yeah?
Yeah.
I
Well-
thought we had talked about, when we did all these changes, that was added,
Well, once they could,
release it.
that they were gonna offer that service and they ended up doing it for free for every animal that had been in the shelter. But the goal had been that once we got online licensing, that every vet in town has a computer on the desk and that they could as well, so that people could, either they could do it and just bill people or not, whatever they wanted, but that, every animal that went out of the shelter for whatever reason.
That was for adoption. Not to
Understood.
actually-
Yeah.
Not to actually redeem their dog for a dog.
But we also had in mind back then, 6 years ago, that once we could get to where people could register online, then the issues of being able to tag a dog at the vet or there would just kind of dissolve, because it would be accessible.
Well, the issue with that, though, is rabies certificates. Because those have to be uploaded and, if you're trying to get your dog in the
But
evening.
if the shelter is going to do it,
But if you're just picking up your dog, they're not gonna give it a rabies shot. You have to go back to your vet, and if they're closed, then you're waiting till the next day to produce that certificate
But
to
if the
get fully
shelter could
tagged.
offer a rabies shot for a stray dog that's actually being claimed, and then they could buy their city tag after they get their rabies shot.
right?
Good, though now you're disproportionately affecting folks that don't have a lot of money and have already paid for a rabies shot.
And they're over at the shelter, they'd have to come back here to Tracy to buy the tag.
Right.
Why? That's the deal. I mean, they've got a computer, and if they need to get a laptop that they keep on the front counter, all people have to do is get on the internet and do it.
That's true, but then those people have to have a credit card or a checking
Right.
account, and you still have to be able to upload a rabies certificate to be fully tagged,
But
so.
right now, I mean, the shelter, I thought it all the way through, the shelter is inoculating and spaying, actually, but inoculating and tagging every animal that they adopt
Right,
out.
but this
So
isn't
they've
for
got the
adoptions.
capacity, I understand that, but they got the capacity to do it there. I raised the issue just because the whole idea of permitting at least half of it is to make sure that the animals have been inoculated,
Sure.
and you've got them right there. Obviously, they got out,
Yep.
or they wouldn't be there, or something wasn't quite right. And so to miss that opportunity
Right.
is a shame.
If we put in the right language, we might be able to force people to get their city tags.
Yeah,
Right now, we're just basically telling them how to get
Yeah.
a city tag when they
Right.
claim their ticket. And they've been charged with no city tag, so it would behoove them to get a city license, though they could either roll the fine or dismiss it altogether in court.
And then they end up without ever inoculating their pet.
yeah.
Right, and they just take their
And
animal,
that's
go
a
home,
shame.
say, I'm not gonna do this. So that would force them into doing it, before they get their dog back. They'd have
And
Yeah.
I had sent notes to Lisa anyway, Lisa in the white. Earlier, when we worked on this before, the idea was that we had to get a lot of different pieces in place. Improve the ordinance, get ACOs up, get online licensing, all these, and get education about why you should have a tag, that it was, safety for your animal and others, and return home in the case of emergency. We've done almost all those things. And to close that deal was then to have the conversation again about whether there should be an initiative with appropriate, either consequences or sales pitches or whatever, to get all the animals in town tagged.
Could we say that you must obtain a city tag within 24 hours or something like that? Because we could match that up on the back end.
Yeah, but they're not gonna do it.
Well,
I think the
But
point
they've got to go,
is-
they've got to go to court anyway for the ticket that they're at, because their animal's gotten picked up and transported for
Doesn't
some
matter.
reason.
They're gonna send that right on over to collections. They're not gonna
Yeah,
pay it.
nope. I think you
They
either
still
need
gotta
to
go to
make them
court,
do it before they get the
Not
dog.
necessarily.
They can go to court, it's gonna go right on to collections.
Sure.
Fran, is that something we can do, is make them pay for their tag before they get their dog back, or can we hold it hostage, per se?
Because I know there was a concern before. I mean,
Yeah.
just to put both sides out that, oh, no, what if they don't take their animal? We don't want any more animals. And so that's a risk. But if it's worthwhile because it'll work.
Well, at the end of the day, if people are either going to register their pets or not. So, I would say, give them the 24 hours to register, and if they don't do it, fine. They're probably not going to do it anyway. And if you, like you say, if you force them to get the tag to get the animal back, first of all, that will disproportionately affect low-income people. And then,
They shouldn't have a dog?
They shouldn't have a dog. You're right.
well,
If they can't take care of it and
yes,
not do the
I would
requirements.
agree.
There's
but-
homeless
Can't have
people
any
that have a
yeah,
dog.
yeah, there's a whole social argument to
Can we
that.
put that in
Hey,
here,
the ones
Um,
with the
quote
signs.
unquote?
So, but if we did that, then perhaps that would give the nudge to people that are willing to, but just haven't. And then, we can use software to clean it up on the back end to make sure that they, by the time it gets to a ticket, if it has to. But that would try to get our dismal registration rate up. I mean, my God, this is less than 10%. It's worse than I thought it
Well,
was.
but realistically, that would work the best if you just knew that you had to hustle up the money because you were gonna have to pay for unless you could produce.
Well, it's not so much the money, it's, if my vet's closed, now I've got to leave that dog in the pound another night before I get my certificate, because I'm not registered without a certificate.
But they give you a certificate. I have all my certificates at home.
I couldn't find mine if my life depended on it.
Well, get organized.
Really, give it to me and I'll
Yeah.
scan
That's
why we
it,
have
and you keep it in your.
Well, but that's my point, though, is now Helping Hands is keeping the dog for yet another day while somebody hunts down a certificate, if they're not as organized as Ms. Clear is.
Well, they keep a copy of it, right? Don't you keep a copy of it on file? Rabies shot.
If not if it's not tagged,
Oh, that's true.
yeah,
That's right, not if it's not.
yeah. Because otherwise, you're right, we're set to go.
Okay, what was your exact question? Do we keep a copy of the
The-
rabies shot vaccination record? We don't, Pet Data does. When they send in something to Pet Data, they keep a copy of it.
Okay,
We usually just view the copy and we return it.
gotcha.
So he has his copy somewhere.
Yes. And if he doesn't, his vet would have one that he could provide to
Yes.
him. So, yeah.
And they have before, when I've called them, if they're open.
Is it?
Right, correct.
Well, use the 24-hour guy over there on.
That's why I switched to it.
Is it possible, if they don't already have permissions, for Helping Hands to have permission to access pet data records to view whether or not somebody's got their shots in a tag?
To see if they have a city license?
Yeah.
Just because they have a city license doesn't mean they're gonna have a current rabies shot if it's expired during that time frame before they renew.
It's gonna be pretty close.
Yeah, but they do have a way, I mean, it shows on there when their rabies was issued and
Right.
it does expire, so it would be helpful if they're needing to have that information, we can give them access.
Well, this is all providing that Helping Hands is willing to do that. They're a
Correct.
nonprofit with a limited budget, so,
Well, but they were really committed to,
Yeah.
they're actually doing all those inoculations and spay neuters.
Yep.
And tagging, which, emerged over the course of those conversations.
So I don't think we ever got an answer. Can you add that to the, could you add that fee to court?
To get the tag?
Yes.
Well, the way we handle it in prosecution, if someone comes in with a dog at large and a tag ticket, we would rather they get the tag and we dismiss the tag ticket. So we
Before-
promote
okay.
going to get the tag. Because usually they come in, it's a dog at large, a tag ticket, and then there's a transport fee, and then the court costs. So with all of those combined, it's 60 plus 76, so
yeah.
136 plus another 30, So we're like, get the tag, bring us the proof, and then we'll dismiss that. You can plead to your dog at large, you can be done.
So you
Sort of like
prefer they
having
get
a
it
family.
before?
Most definitely, that's
Okay.
our position in the office.
Okay.
Do they have to pay for animal transport?
We try, if it's on the ticket, we definitely make them.
So we
Perhaps this is one of those where we need to take this out, set it aside, work on it a little bit, because I don't know that we can
even if
We
we.
talked to Deb at
Yeah.
Helping Hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna take, a couple months of just working through with Tracy and everybody to try to find a way to make this work, but I think it's definitely worth pursuing.
Yeah,
Um,
because it defeats the whole purpose of tagging animals
Yeah.
if the system isn't robust enough to actually help return animals home.
So if
It's
it would
worth
be okay if we just carve that piece out?
Well,
I'm
and
sorry.
if we can get the vets to agree to let us know who has our rabies shots, that would help us with compliance rates as well. But that would be getting them to actually agree to giving us that information,
They're not
Yeah.
gonna do it.
which,
Well,
Yes.
everybody's got different software and exporting that data.
Well, they just still remember
yes,
last
There's-
time the
there's a
city
couple
tried to
that-
get them to do it. It's like 10 years ago, and I don't think they're ever gonna forget.
yeah. So that's.
They're thinking confidentiality.
They don't want the
protect.
city in their data.
Yeah,
Or
Sort
if
of
we
like
could-
HIPAA.
If you could get them to hand out the brochures even, to get
Yeah.
those in the hands of all of their clients, that would be helpful.
And see, that had been part of what we'd hoped we'd get to.
Right.
And they actively trying to engage them in not only promoting that, but working out a system whereby separate from their database, their medical database, they could just get online and log into the city's, because they could, for instance, do that by simply signing up, saying, well, Mrs. So-and-so, and what's your address again? And okay, and Mrs. So-and-so give them the $20 or $8 or whatever it is, and they run a tab, and then they've sent you 5 registrations today and send you $40, and it's done. And Mrs. So-and-so gets her tag in the mail, boom. You could do that from anywhere.
Right, and we get a lot of the I didn't know about it kind of thing, so even getting that information to them, even if
Yeah.
it's just through their.
But
vet-
making
vet.
it possible, just
For the vet to
training the
help with.
receptionists, the gals who are the clerks or the information desk even at Helping Hands rather than one of the other staff people. And, because they're real good at customer service there. It's just helping somebody get it done.
Right.
And we
Sometimes
hoped
people
that we
need
would
that.
get it to the point where that could happen. And it sounds like we're, with the software especially, that finally we're close. And it doesn't, one of the things that came out of our group was to advocate that there would not be a surcharge to do it online. So people
Yeah.
wouldn't want to not do it and
Right.
instead come down to the LEC and have to take up 20 minutes of your time telling you all about their dog.
Oh, I
Well,
know.
I know.
So are you okay if I put this on
I
the
think so. I
project
mean,
list?
that is a whole other thing to
It'll
discuss
take
as
a
to
while.
how to
I think
get.
it'll take a while to kind of
Yeah.
get that process done. It sounds like there's a lot of people that we'll have to work through it with, so it might be,
I do think it's worth looking into.
Yeah,
You're right, because
I would
we need to
agree.
get those registrations up.
I would agree. Okay, the next revisions or comments are on page 22, under 6.15170. The first one is to delete some language at the request of animal control, and I think we talked
We
about
talked
that
about it
earlier.
last time.
Okay. The next is language that we had talked about as far as animals that have been held for a lengthy period of time, and maybe some way to work with prosecution in the court as well as animal control to try to have a happy medium. And this is kind of the language that we came up with after a lot of discussion. So
Why did you choose 30 days? Why can't it be 10? Why is it, 30 days
I
seems
asked-
like a long,
She has the same thing.
I asked the same thing.
Service by mail, so it causes issues with.
30 days is
They get it.
just a good buffer to
Buffer
make
for
sure
what?
that no one's pet gets turned over to Helping Hands Humane Society and either adopted out or euthanized without making sure proper notice was given.
So 15 days won't work.
15 days could work. My opinion is it's just better to err on the side of caution.
Well,
when it
I just
comes-
think of that dog sitting there,
Yeah.
and us footing the bill
Mhm.
for 30 days while someone,
We
you know,
do 10-day
decides
notices for weeds
whether-
and other abatement and expect
Right.
people to get it and do something.
Well,
Yeah,
It's
there's
just
big
an animal,
pushback
I
for
think
that,
that's-
though,
yeah.
so.
It's somebody's animal, and that we want to
Understood.
be more sensitive to it.
Could
If we
re-
got personal
20
service,
days.
we've got it
30
in
days just
72
seems
hours.
long.
If we
Yeah.
can serve somebody personally with papers,
Yeah.
obviously, it's like you know about it, you get here in 72 hours, or you obviously don't care that much. But with the mail, people are so transient sometimes, and I don't know.
So
How
could
much
we
the-
could reduce that?
How much per day does it cost us to board an animal?
$12.
So if we reduced it to 20,
That would be helpful.
I mean, would
How much
20
does it
days
cost to
work?
send a
It would
special
be-
process server out? 25
It would.
bucks?
Right.
Boom,
probably.
done.
Right.
Just do it.
And we gotta find that person though. That's the tough part.
Well, I
And-
think
and
20
this-
days is.
This applies only to instances where there's a mailed citation. So there was never a handoff or anything. It's just mailed to an address, say, this is your dangerous dog, you need to appear in court.
So we'll always try for the process server if we can. If that fails, then this is what we fall back to.
Correct.
I see.
I would move to change that to 20.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, that should be
Okay.
sufficient time.
Okay, page 23. On D2, on confinement, muzzle restraint. Animal control wanted to tighten up the manner in which dangerous dogs are constrained and wanted to ensure that dangerous dogs can't be sold or given away to other people. And in that same vein, language was added to the top of page 24 that just basically flat out says transfer prohibited.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me why we would allow somebody to transfer over the ownership of their dangerous dogs so somebody else can get attacked by it that's been convicted of dangerous. That doesn't make any sense. It sounds like such a lie.
I thought we covered that 6 years ago. Karen, do you remember that?
I don't know that we covered the issue of whether they could sell them or give them away. We did cover the restraint. and
That
kind of
wasn't
thing.
covered, Lisa, you don't think?
No, I don't believe it ever was. I caught it in the ordinance, and that's why I told them, I said, I think
Great.
we need to remove that, just for the safety of the public. So
Mm-hmm.
Is this
Okay.
okay with everybody?
Yep.
then?
What if
Okay.
they want a different brand building besides Morton? They want a different brand building besides Morton?
Morton
It's
Building.
a joke, people.
Okay, the
Okay.
next revision is on page 25, and this deals with confinement of certain dogs. For the first part, we just reference back to the dangerous dog section that we just went over, if it's a dangerous dog. The second instance is if it's an unspayed female dog in heat, and we just kind of go through the fact that they need to be confined in a certain way. And then the very next section talks about cats, and again, deals with an unspayed female cat in heat, or one where you're talking about an odor that's kind of a nuisance. Everybody okay with those?
Cool.
Okay. Then we get to miniature pigs on page 26. After listening in on the conversations with the vets and given the feedback from the committee members, we added in the fact that needed to get the blood test and a health certificate. So we put that in as a requirement, and then we deleted reference to pseudo when it talked, when, given the big discussion we had on the fact that there is no pseudo rabies. The one thing that's changed or is different since the June 12th meeting is that Lisa had asked maybe for consideration of reducing the weight to pigs weighing less than 80 pounds rather than 150 pounds, which is a lot
I actually
smaller.
have an example. One of my officers had to go out the other night and capture two 200-pound pigs. And he had a hard time dealing with that. He could hardly lift him in the cage. And then he had to come back to the department and get one of the older trucks that had a cage as opposed to his compartments. Because the pig would not fit in our compartments out there. So he had to load him in an old truck that had a cage. But nevertheless, these were 200-pound pigs, and he had a hard time trying to catch them.
Are they pigs or miniature pigs?
And it could be a potbelly pig.
Well, a miniature
No.
pig is defined up
What-
into to 150 pounds, and past that, it's no longer a miniature pig.
That's
Yeah.
So
right,
that's a
but we don't-
full-blown hog.
Right, we don't have any way to weigh them, and they were just running
Yeah.
loose, and all he could tell me was that they were huge, but it didn't look like they were over 200, but it may not have been 200, it may have been 150. So-
I'd
But
leave
your
it at
point
a-
is that.
But
leave it at
nevertheless,
that.
they were hard to,
Lower than
they were
Yeah.
hard to capture.
And the gal that's pushing for this, her pig weighs 120 pounds.
Yeah, I
So
think
you're-
that's
you're
kinda
defeating the whole purpose
average.
Mm. of all of this.
120 pounds is big. too,
Agreed.
so- Yeah, so if you get.
Yeah,
to
but my dog
150,
weighs
you're getting-
150.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to have weight issues with any animal that's large anyhow. So, I mean, I do see your point. There is an issue at a certain weight, but, I mean, there are
We'll be able-
dogs that weigh 150, 175
Yeah.
pounds. What do you do with them?
Well, we load them and take them in to where they need to be taken to.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way. We have Tommy lifts on our trucks, the lifts.
But isn't that like the first or second time you ever had a pig?
Well, I can count on one hand how many times I've had to deal with a pig in 31 years. But
Okay.
I know the fetch pole doesn't work. The fetch pole
No.
just slips right off.
They don't really have
Right
necks.
off
It's
their
just sort of an
So
extension.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think 150. I think the average is like 100 and something.
Yeah.
I don't think 80.
Well, there is a city, I think it's Wichita, that has
Under
80
the
pounds.
miniature pig import.
Is 80 pounds, 80
Yeah.
pounds.
I looked it up
Weight
today, but I can't remember what it
Must be less than
said.
100 pounds.
Wichita must be less than 80.
Yeah.
Unified government must be less than 100. Shawnee must be less than 100. Lawrence's cannot exceed 150. That's about it.
Shawnee's 100, so.
Olathe, Overland Park, don't even have weight restrictions. It doesn't.
I think when they get 150, it's kind of dangerous for the pig, from what I remember reading.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if miniature pigs would really ever be 150. I mean, hogs, yes. But I don't know if it's going to be an issue with miniature pigs.
What they grow to.
So consensus, leave it at 150? What do you?
Mm.
I mean, since we're already equipped to handle large animals when it gets to dogs, so, and since this doesn't happen that often, if we were having a regular occurrence, then I could see some argument for that. But again, there aren't that many of these.
All right, page 27. In lines 969, 970, that's basically just deleting the verbiage for circuses and carnivals because they aren't licensed in the city per city clerk's office. And then you get,
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Oh. I did speak with Pet Data, and they are equipped to help us with that, but they would not be able to help with the documentation part of the blood test required. So the first time they would license, they would either have to mail in their request with that blood test sheet or come down to the police department to license.
They don't have a way you can just attach a document to it.
She didn't make it sound like they did, but I can re-ask her if maybe they can just attach it to the,
Because I wouldn't, I mean,
Rabies
obviously they
certificate.
wouldn't have a way to fill it out like you do the rabies information, but if you could just attach a document, a PDF of the certificate.
to the online
Yeah,
licensing part.
or, you know, the other option, of course, is then mail it in.
Right, right, and that's what she
So-
said, they would just have to mail it in. 'cause
Yeah,
they didn't
but if there's a
have an
way to
attachment
attach
for-
the certificate, then I would think that would cover the online aspect. of it.
Okay, I'll ask them if they have a way. They have a way to attach the current spay and neuter and then the rabies separate. She was just saying they didn't have a way to attach the other. So I'll just ask them again
Yeah,
if
if we
there's
could
any
just
way
use
to.
that existing functionality.
Yep, and I can let you know. That'll work.
Would there be a solution just to come down here to do it? So just don't do it
Yeah.
on Pet Data? Not even given an
Yeah.
option?
Or we could mail it in the same way
Or
we,
mail it in,
yeah.
So.
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, if it's just a document attachment, the same as we're doing with the other ones, so.
Okay, we're on the monkey, right?
We're on the monkey.
Oh, the
So
monkeys.
bottom of page 27 onto the top of 28.
See, I thought, why not leave it in case it ever comes up again?
And I attached
know?
all of the
Yeah, I
minutes
saw
from the
that.
service monkey
Yep.
discussion,
I mean,
just so you guys
it's not
would have
hurting
some
anything,
frame of
just
reference.
Did
leaving it in there.
Yes, ma'am?
Did you all have a conversation earlier in this series of proceedings about service monkeys?
Short.
Well, because the deal was that HSUSA
Yep.
didn't find out about it till the last minute, and there really is a lot of debate nationally about it.
Yeah.
I was on the council when Sylvia and I were, when we ran it through, and there was a particular individual who had some needs and had an advocate who asked us, and they had linked him up with that particular organization. And we really went back and forth about it and finally put it in really just for him and even named the organization, which is pretty unusual,
Yeah.
really, for a city ordinance. And then later people found out more because the organization seemed to be pretty well regarded, I mean, I don't even know if it still exists for that matter. Apparently, nobody could track down this young man anymore that had the monkey. But later, capuchins apparently can get pretty combative, and so they pull all their teeth so they won't bite their patients and so on. And there are people
that's
that
not
have a
cruelty at all.
problem with that. And so those were just some of the conversations that happened later. So we really, and I'm not saying what to do, but as I recall, when we put it in, it was for this person, the language was very, very narrow, so that you couldn't just show up and have an old circus monkey and say that you needed a household support animal or something, but with the intent that a future council might reconsider, truthfully. So just for that, what that's worth.
I don't know that there's a whole lot of research out there in the U.S. about service monkeys being good. I mean, I haven't seen it in any other cities where it's permissible.
Well, they
So-
were able to produce that at the time and had some sort of, references
Yeah.
for the company, as I recall.
They can be dangerous. They're a wild animal.
Yeah.
Right,
They can bite you.
Who
Right.
would pick up the monkey at large?
oh, Lisa.
Monkey
Yeah.
at large.
Yes.
That would be under the exotic, yes.
Yes.
Exotic ordinance.
There's no monkeying around there, is there?
Don't let him do that.
So what do you think? I mean,
About,
delete it, leave it in?
Yeah,
well,
that's,
there's only been one person that's had one.
Just got,
yeah. Yeah. I don't see the need to have monkeys in here. I mean, I haven't seen an instance where the monkey would be needed to do something that either technology or another animal couldn't do. But then again, I wasn't here through all of those discussions, so if there's institutional knowledge I'm not aware of, then that's entirely a possibility, but.
it doesn't matter to me.
You wanna flip a coin?
I mean, I would say err on the side of caution and pull it out. I mean, that's my opinion, because there's nobody that has one. We have no requests to have it. This is true.
That we know of.
Yes.
that has
Do you
not
think
come
it should
forward.
stay in or be out?
I would recommend it being omitted.
Okay.
It's a dangerous animal.
All right, so we skip to page 30. 6.30.020, this was recommended or requested by Animal Control to clarify the manner in which domestic fowl and poultry are kept. Okay? All right, page 31. Animal Control has asked that the 6.35.020, the former, be deleted in its entirety. And Lisa can explain that a little bit further if somebody needs explanation, but everybody all right with that?
good.
Yep.
Okay,
I mean, what was the meaning behind that?
Because when we go out, we don't inspect for that kind of stuff. We just make sure that the animals are okay physically. As far as watertight places and fly-proof windows and stuff like that, we've never gotten involved in that. It's just,
Well, that's more of a farm type
Yeah.
deal. Yeah, than
okay. Then page 32, we're recommending deletion of what was formerly non-conforming keeping of livestock because we don't think any of them are alive anymore. And livestock as a nuisance, it was repealed. I'm just saying, well, let's just take it out unless Brenda Younger tells me as the clerk that she needs it there for some reason.
those cows that get loose are wild, I'm telling you.
And then the very last section on grazing in public property prohibited. So there's been some discussion about what language should be inserted in there to make sure that if there's little horsies that, and there's some kind of event that doesn't, it's not required for that particular event to get a special permit, for a special event permit or some other permit, how can we go about allowing those types of animals to be there legally without getting gigged under this.
So this is somebody
Provision.
has a party and they bring in one of these little miniature horses that they ride in a circle. That's basically permitting that.
And, typically, the first thing that rises in my mind is that it's a special event, so you're gonna go get a special event permit, and then under those you have to say, are you gonna have animals, or are you
Well,
not gonna
but
have
not for
animals?
somebody's birthday party in a park.
But that's what
Yeah.
Councilmember Hiller raised, so,
Yeah.
we're just trying to figure out how to address that, so
Because I
that
saw one of those
the
at
4-year-old
Boswell Square.
won't get arrested
month
on a
ago.
birthday.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to arrest you for riding a horse on your birthday.
I finally came up with
spoil her
perhaps
birthday
saying
party.
lawful
We're gonna crush your
and/or
dreams.
permitted events, so that if it wasn't, the birthday party wasn't illegal. Because what people do, Potwin had both horses and ponies in their parade, and it reminded me, even besides all this discussion, what happens is, because it's horses, they've got the event, and so the pony rides are gonna be at a certain time, but they tether the ponies someplace else, so they're not there until it's time to bring them in for the walk around or whatever it is. So there's gonna be 2 different locations where the ponies are, just as an example, where the animals will be for this one little event that might be a birthday party, or it might be a parade that's got some streets closed, but I know of a number of them where they've just, I think the county requires people to have a permit for an event in our old former city parks now, but I don't know what they require. But generally, what people do is go tether the horses in the park and then bring them over to the house or whatever.
Do you know anybody at the county that you could ask that question? Cran's wife works, so she's a
Nice.
Well, Parks
county
and
counselor.
Rec, is,
And she's
I
on
mean-
that Parks and Recs committee, actually.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's funny.
And maybe the
So-
appropriate answer to that is a time limit. If you want to have a horse for your 2-hour birthday party, that's fine. But you're not going to keep the horse there for
the
8 hours
balance of the
before your
day.
party, so we could limit it to 30 minutes before, after the
It
designated
might be
event.
a conference with county legal,
Yeah.
actually,
That's
because
his
they're
wife
the
works there.
ones
Yeah.
whose parks people are
Yeah,
probably.
throwing said parties
It
in.
might be somebody's backyard, which is
Yeah.
city. But it might be in a park, and so,
Okay, we'll look further into that one and bring it back to you with the others. So, what we have is, I think, a pretty good idea of where y'all want to go, so I'll kind of mess with this a little bit more and hopefully get it into final format. What's your goal as far as getting it back on a council agenda? Do you have a particular date that you want to get it back
How much more time?
for consideration?
I can check. Do we want to try and meet one more time and approve the changes we discussed today, or are we all pretty comfortable with those? Well, we have to approve something else, so we'll have to meet again
That's
to approve and push up. So maybe that's just the next thing, is we'll schedule a meeting as quick as we can to approve your changes, and then bless the whole thing and answer any other outstanding questions. Yes, ma'am.
one outstanding issue that came up before,
Yeah.
and maybe you've already talked about it and decided, is whether you all are gonna address the issue of whether there's a maximum number of animals per household.
Yeah, we already talked about
And
Yeah,
we
we-
talked about it last time, we decided not to go
So
there.
the
'cause we were
concern
talking
with the
about-
maximum number of animals was to address whether or not they're being taken care of properly. And so rather than address the maximum number of animals, we added stronger language to animal welfare.
Gotcha.
So that way, in theory, I mean, if you have 10 dogs and they're well taken care of, that's fine. But, there's strict requirements for sanitation that we've improved, and now, the shots and vaccinations, that sort of thing. So without setting a maximum number of animals, we tried to basically eliminate the circumstances where there was an issue with too many.
Performance, which is,
Yeah.
that's good, I just was
So,
checking, because
yep.
it will almost inevitably come up.
Yeah.
It'd be hard
So
to
do you
enforce,
think we meet
tell people they need to get rid of their animals, they got
I
like more
think
than
so.
They
seven.
put 2 kitties under the
Yeah,
porch.
if that works.
They'd have
Are
to
you
choose
okay with
which
that?
ones they want to get rid of.
couple
That wouldn't go over
Okay.
very well.
I'll have Angela put
So
something
wait,
together.
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, because we won't need this much time to go through, because all we do is go over the last of the revisions we've made and then answer any else.
I'll take out, if that's okay with you, I'll just take out all the comments you guys have already, kind
Yeah.
of agreed upon, and just leave, hey, this is one you need to double check, this
Yeah.
is one you need to double check to do the final blessing.
Okay.
So it should be only maybe an hour even.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
All right, there any other business? Therefore, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.